Hello and welcome to Bud's RPG Review, where I give my thoughts on role-playing games, card games and board games. Today's retro review is 1981's Cults of Terror for Runequest 2nd edition by Chaosium. Okay, first a bit of history. Cults of Terror is a 96-page book that was released as a companion piece to Cults of Prax that detailed the bad guys of Glorantha. The book details the most prominent chaos cults in the Runequest setting: Bagog, Malia, Thed, Vivamort, Primal Chaos, Thanatar, Crashed, the Crimson Bat, and Nysalor/Gabaji. The book also has in-depth coverage of the Runequest cosmology. I made the decision while reading this that the Cosmology of Quran is such an intricate, deep and often confusing story that I feel it needs to be explained properly, and to do this I will need to do the review in two separate parts. Part 1 will cover the cosmology, and Part 2 will cover the actual cults contained in the book. Okay, to the cover. Here we have a piece of art by Paul Jacques that has a very Runequest feel to it, who also does some of the internal art, along with Rick Becker. First up we have an introduction which gives an explanation as to the use of the book and the ideas that it challenges, one that all chaos creatures are not totally and automatically corrupt. Ideally the book is meant for NPCs, not players. It goes on to give a brief explanation of why cults exist and how they relate to the gods directly. It also explains the reasons for actually worshipping a deity. The timeline of Glorantha begins around 1600 years ago, with the sun god rising in the east and instituting the new power of time. This explains why Gloranthan dates are written with the ST suffix, ST standing for Solara Tempora. It explains that time is the most powerful of all of the gods of the New Age, and that it takes three recognisable forms: lineal, cyclical and illusory. It's worth pointing out that time did not exist in the God Time or the Great Darkness, and that the lineal restrictions placed upon myths and stories of those ages exist as part of our own temporal state of mind, and the events didn't necessarily happen even in the order we perceive them to. Indeed, it mentions that magicians of the Hero Wars period referred to the God Time as the magic place or God World. We're told that time was born in hell, where chaos held sway over the universe. When the Lightbrinkers entered the underworld and completed their great tasks, they forged a pact that bound everything, gods and mortals, living and dead, to something called the Great Compromise. Nothing was exempt from this. With this pact, the gods settled their wars and agreed on a common ground for existence. Their vows are the source and cause of time. The deities were spiritually bound to the New Age. This freed the lesser creatures of the world to grow, which included communing and communicating with the gods and the powers of the universe. Time reorganised the reigning confusion and made regularity between light and darkness, life and death, etc. Although some cults believe solely in lineal time, many believe in cyclical time above all. Illusory time is best represented as being in stasis in god time and myth. We have an explanation of calendrical time and the main two measurements, lunar time and solar time. Lunar time is measured by the lunar chronomancers as being from the date the Red Goddess was born in 1220 ST, and solar time is measured by the movement of the sun and measures out the seasons. Following this we have a sample cult. This gives a detailed breakdown of how the cults in the book are presented. This covers the mythos and history, nature of the cult, organisation, lay membership, initiate membership, rune lord membership, rune priesthood, subservient cults and associated cults, and we also have guidelines on devising rune spells. The Cosmology of Quran is next up. It details how the god learners of Durastella devised a method of analysing the mythos of Glorantha in four philosophies: the void, which has pre-existence as being indescribable, less than nothing, formless beyond emptiness; the prime mover, which originates the humanist universe, an impartial force that can be tapped or exploited by dominant mortal races; the silence, which is the origin of the theist universe, a great dormant and impersonal force that contains everything within it. The silence exists without a beginning or end. And finally, the primal plasma, a naturalist viewpoint, often depicted as the well of wonder that contains miraculous material which separated into material elements. A group of deities called the Celestial Court are said to have made the world. The pantheon was set into three distinct parts: the celestial pairs, the elemental deities and the elder gods. They were 8 gods that were each associated with ancient power runes. In addition to this, there are 4, sometimes 5, elementals involved, the 5th element being represented as darkness or cold. Additionally, we have the elder gods, who are impersonal deities who are necessary but don't hold any status, like the maker and the grower. The Celestial Court combined their powers and created the centre of the world, or as it is known, the perfect place, the exterior of which was the spike, a cosmic mountain, called so as it acted as a metaphorical nail that held together reality. The perfect place was a wondrous place filled with harmony and beauty. From the spike the world grew. Following this we had the Golden Age. This was a time when dreams were true and only peace and harmony existed. At this time the form runes were introduced and the young gods born. The first rune was the Dragon Newt rune. Following that was the Plant rune, the Animal rune, and the Man rune. Many races grew in the Golden Age, all living in harmony. At this time, Yelm the Sun God was said to be the ruler of the universe. The Gods' War changed all of that. This happened due to the birth of the god Umath, whose first action was to demand realms of his own equal to his parents. When none were available, Umath made one for himself by tearing his father and mother apart. This separated the sky from the earth forever and set a violent path for the children of Umath that followed. Umath's propensity for violence caused his brood to devolve and caused the otherwise peaceful new gods to follow. This caused turbulence in the cosmos, which birthed the storm gods. This spread worship as the races sought protection at this time of upheaval. At this time, death came to the hands of Humacht, and then to Orlanth, who used it on Yelm. The death of the sun god instituted a new reign. The Storm Age was a time when the lesser darkness began after Yelm was killed and left the world of the living to follow Grandfather Mortal into the land of death. It was a dark time where gods hid and drew further away. Life and light left the world, and the gods fought when they wanted. Glorantha became a barren wasteland. The Celestial Court stayed aloof during all of this. As Glorantha worsened, and the gods acted against their own welfare, creatures seeped through the cracks in the world's logic into reality itself. One of these creatures was known as Crashed. The god of motion, Larnster, attempted to stamp on this foul creature, but was bitten by it, and Larnster became immediately infected, and his blood dripped to the earth, creating the Foul Blood Woods. This was considered the birth of chaos into the world. The last born god into the world was Rashiran, a god of unknown parentage. Rashiran tried to teach the gods to be unafraid. Some of the gods were fortified by his teachings, like Humacht and Uleria. 3 of the other gods realised that they were not afraid, and they conspired to destroy Rashiran. These gods were known as the Unholy Trio. They were motivated by hatred, selfishness, greed and jealousy. The first of these gods was Ragnaglar, often referred to as a kinsman of Stormbull. The second was Thed, thought to be the wife of Ragnaglar, and the third was Malia. These 3 gods joined forces to perform a ritual that would allow them to discover the power of primal chaos. Their actions would change the world forever. The culmination of this ritual birthed the devil himself, often referred to as Wakboth. Wakboth was the enemy of the world, a terrifying entity that disregarded life and enjoyed wanton and brutal destruction, the defiler of the world. Kajabor was another major enemy of the time. Kajabor was a great evil god like Wakboth that turned on his followers. Difference being that Kajabor did it because he had to, Wakboth did it because he enjoyed it. Kajabor was the wielder of entropy in the world and was known as the God Killer, the Black Hole and the Great Fear, who annihilated his enemies to the point where their name had become lost from the universe. The chaotic armies began overwhelming the world, some say from the north, and the survivors of the gods were notable warriors and leaders. A great alliance was formed amongst the deities to fight on the fields of plenty, led by Genna, the earth god. The forces of chaos fought this alliance to an utter victory. The gods were wiped out in a maelstrom of utter destruction, their bodies turned to gorp, and their souls scoured by the fatal screaming. The fields of plenty were forever polluted and known as the Kerjalki Bog. The true death of gods sent the remaining into flight. Many sought refuge in the Spike. The Chaos Army advanced on the Spike from all sides and broke through its defences, and the Celestial Court were destroyed. This release of energy caused the Spike to vaporise, destroying its inhabitants. A great vacuum opened in the centre of the world, ushering in the Greater Darkness. The Greater Darkness, or the Age of Terror as it was known, was the end of the world for most of the Gloranthan entities. Parts of the world vanished, others became isolated. Many deities sacrificed themselves, trying to combat the void, and their acts filled it. Most notable was Megasta, a sea god, who rallied all the water in the world to aid him. From that point, all water flows downwards to Megasta's pool. The young gods were now fugitives, and life, the earth, and the gods were on a knife edge. Wakboth, Kajabor, and the Unholy Trio continued their rampage across the world, and others invaded, like Tien the Headhunter and Crash the Hungry One. Other beings turned to Wakboth's ways, such as Vivamort, who prowled the lands. The conquered lands were filled by slime by a giant evil ooze called Gorp God. Chaos creatures were born and crawled upon the land. The wildlife was overwhelmed and enslaved. At one point, the armies of Wakboth and Kajabor started to devour one another, and it is believed that Kajabor was killed by Wakboth. The world was on the brink of failure. The resistors were separated by the Gulf of Chaos across the land, but they formed together in a unity against all reason. The forces fought back in the I Fought We Won battle, which is said to be responsible for saving the world. Notable for fighting chaos were the Darkness deities and the Troll Mother Goddess Kargalitor and Zabor the Sorcerer Supreme. Following this battle and the death of Kajabor, the Chaos forces were weakened and dissipated, and some deities were still capable of action, notably Stormbull. Stormbull mustered his forces and fought Wakboth in Prax. Stormbull was aided by everything that the world had to offer. As he came to his last gasp, the cosmos aided him, and a massive block of true stone fell from the heavens, a piece of the spike that was set adrift after it exploded. This true stone struck Wakboth, grinding him and spreading his essence about. With the devil beaten, the forces of chaos fell back. The world fought back. Dakafal came and taught the people how to tell the dead from the living. Slowly, the world began to recover. Orland, after the war against chaos, had grown and changed. He took responsibility for his part in releasing this doom upon the world. Orland decided on a quest to go to Hell. He fought his way there and eventually came upon Yelm. The two deities came to an agreement, forged in part by Arachne Solara, and was known as the Great Compromise. Arachne Solara is the name given to the goddess of nature in Glorantha. She has mysterious origins, but is suspected to be the ghost of Glorantha and the mother of the universe. She first came to notice at the Great Compromise. She created a great magical web that she gave to the gods. The gods used this web on Kajabor, who was then devoured alive by Arachne Solara. She then collected the net and used it to conceal the birth of her child. The child is the pledge of the gods, and is an oath that recreated the world. Yelm, Orlant and the other gods prepared to leave their home of death. They fought their way out and surged to victory. The reborn gods journeyed to the edge of the world, Dawngate. A star waited there for them, and even the darkness was glad to see them. Arachne Solara stood upon the gate of time and cast her net across the universe, catching every surviving thing and binding it to the new world. The child was born and then concealed by the net and protected by the strands. The child was called Time. The new world was born, time reigned, and history began. Of course, due to these events being mythical and existing before time, they were non-sequential. Time was known as the Cosmic Compromise and creates a set of rules that the world must follow. If these rules are broken, the impossible has happened and chaos will re-enter the world. Time separates the gods from the world. It was formed as a pact to ensure the survival of everything. Immortality came with a sacrifice, freedom. Unlike the gods, however, the mortals of the world kept their freedom and can change the world. It is agreed that chaos is not part of the world and an enemy that must be fought. The years following the first sunrise saw the lands that were ruined by the gods' war and the greater darkness flourish. Ancient races renewed their conflicts. There was a war between trolls, dwarves and elves. Human cultures clashed. During this time, no incursions by chaos were reported, although some unique immense entities were discovered, like the Crimson Bat. Distinct cultures emerged, most notably the Brithos humanists from the west, the spiritual empire from east of Genetella, said to have been taught by the dragons, and the naturalists who worshipped spirits, objects and the powerful and tangible forces of nature. In the Dawn Age, these cultures had little contact, and the different cultures stayed separate from each other. The land of Dorostor, however, was different. Government was moved from Dragon Pass so that they could use the remnants of a lost civilization there. They unearthed what they believed to be the secrets of the universe, and they attempted to return to the God's Age by making a perfect god for everyone, Osentalka the Perfect One. This was a contentious issue that caused war to break out, especially with the trolls and dragon newts. However, everyone was assured that this would be a success. In the year 374, the great genesis of the Perfect One reached its climax. The Frenella wizards engaged in thaumaturgical contest with a powerful heathen god. In Krolorilla, the dragon emperors meditated upon a potent symbol. In Pamaltella, 100,000 elves, led by their god Pamalt, sent their energies coursing through the world. The sun stopped in the sky. Nobody knows for how long it stood still, but eventually dark strands grew bold in the sky like loops of a rope. The sun seemed to be pulled back to its path. Strands snapped and a dark spot rose into the sky, creeping across the face of the sun. A moment of terror pierced the world, and the shadow disappeared and the sun brightened, although some say it was paler and moved differently. In Dorostor, there was a birth. Osentalka, the Perfect One, was born, but most called him Nisalor, the White Light, and he was worshipped under that name. He was a wonder and a miracle to behold. The cult of Nisalor grew peacefully and benevolently, spreading eastward from Dorostor into Peloria and westward into Ralios. Nisalor was considered kind and even embraced by the elves. The trolls and dragon newts had a different experience. Nisalor's armies carried war to the gates of the Castle of Lead, and the trolls were cursed, so that the descendants of Kai Galitor suffered the Troll King curse. The dragon newts were conquered. In the west, a plague broke out, but was miraculously cured by the riddlers of Nisalor. Then came Arkat. Arkat came from western Brithos. It was believed that Arkat was the son of Humact, but also believed that he was the son of a barbarian warrior. Arkat possessed a powerful weapon called Godcleaver, the unbreakable sword. He grew up among the elder army of Brithos and was a prodigy in combat. In his youth he saw the dark side of the cult of Nisalor. He helped drive the religion from his land and thus began his quest to eradicate the cult. He found out that the Berithian wizards had discovered that the cult of Nisalor had planted a disease that they went on to cure. This earned the cult of Nisalor the new name of Gabaji, and was known thus thereafter. Arkat raised a great army to fulfill his vow to destroy the cult. He trained to become a knight, and over the next few years destroyed the Vampire Legion. Moving deeper into Rallios, he found out that the barbarians and non-humans had begun worshipping Gabaji. Arkat continued to gather an army around him and fought many great battles, which culminated in him abandoning the cult of Humact and aligning himself with the trolls, joining the cult of Kaigalitor and undergoing a ritual to become a troll, then joining the cult of Zaraxaran. Arkat left no part of Dorastor untouched. Finally, atop the Tower of Dreams, he met Gabaji. In a great battle that shattered the land around him, Arkat emerged victorious, and the defamed god was dismembered and his parts buried in many places around the world, protected by tons of rock and powerful magic. Following the battle, Arkat was no longer a troll, or so it was said. The war had lasted 75 years, and Arkat retired to the quiet lands of Rallios. There he kept a simple farmstead that was known as Arkat's Peace. People talked for many years after the event, wondering where God Cleaver went, and the worship of Nicelord and Gabaji vanished into history. After this time of upheaval, we had the Second Age. Chaos held little sway in the world, and the empire of the Worm's friends rose and fell. A second investigation by the God Learners took place. The Dark Empire came into being, and worship of Arkat as a god started appearing. The Third Age started with the birth in 1220 ST of the Red Goddess by the Seven Mothers. She hero-crested across the world, vanishing for many years, and finally reappeared with the Crimson Bat, spreading terror and conquest wherever she went. The Red Goddess had a connection with chaos that many found uncomfortable. After destroying the kingdom of Carmenia, the ancient powers of the Elder Gods were stirred into action, but the Red Goddess was now a part of the fabric of the world. She ascended into the sky, where she is now visible as the Red Moon. During her hero quest, the Red Goddess met Nicelor and Arachne Solara, and it was said that she was intimate with time itself. The Red Goddess in no way condones the spread of chaos and entities that worship Wakboth, and the Risen Lunar Empire have a different philosophy on chaos, citing the Crimson Bat as a way of understanding its nature and has grown powerful and effective. The Lunar Empire holds a fruitful peace at this time, but philosophers say that a cataclysm to end the New Age, one that seems to occur every 500 years, draws closer. Hard reckonings are due, powers are stirring. It is the start of the Hero Wars. To be continued in Part 2.